Hey peeps, it's Jedd here from Disrupt Tutoring, and as always, it's such a pleasure to join you. Today we're going to deal with some factorizing questions, and with that in mind, I'm going to get straight into the questions. So they've asked us to factorize the following expressions fully. I'm going to start with 1.1.1. I always like to write the question out first, just to get myself into the zone. Right, so when it comes to factorizing, we need to go through the three approaches. Now, the first thing we could do is pull out a highest common factor. Now, we need to spot or have a look whether or not there is a highest common factor here. In my mind, there is, and I'm sure you've spotted it as well. We can see that both terms in this expression have an x. So we're going to pull out an x. So we're going to pull out an x, and what would we be left with once we've pulled out the x, or once we've divided both terms by x? Well, we'd have a 4 in the first term, and we'd have an x squared in the second term. So a quick check there. So if I times that back in, I would have 4x minus x cubed. So that means we've factorized correctly. Now, a lot of you would move on to the next question, but they've said to us, factorize fully. And if we have another look here, we can see that there is something sitting in this bracket that we can still do. And if you look at it closely, you can see that there is a difference of two squares. So we're going to keep that x over there, and we're going to open up our two brackets. We're going to put our plus and our minus sign within those brackets, and now we square root the first term in the brackets above, which will be 2, and we will square root the second term in both the brackets. We'll square root the second term, and we'll put it in to both brackets below. So it's going to be x, and that gives us the final answer, because we cannot do anything more. Okay, it's very important to make sure that you're factorized fully and there's nothing left for you to do. Moving on to question 1.1.2. As I say, I always like to write the question out. Brilliant. Okay. Now, if we look at this one, we can see some signs that we're used to. We can see there's a square over there. We can see we've got 3 terms, which means it's a trinomial. So therefore, we're going to try and use a trinomial approach here. All right, so I'm going to draw out my 2 brackets. I now need to look at my sign. So this sign over here indicates that I need different signs in both of the brackets. I can square root my first term immediately because there isn't a coefficient there. So I can put an x and an x. Now we need to try and find 2 numbers that multiply to 54 and subtract to 15. So multiply to 54 and subtract to 15. Now this is through trial and error, but you'll eventually get to the point where you think of 18 and 3. 18 times 3 gives you 54, and 18 minus 3 gives you 15. So where do I put the 18 and where do I put the 3? This is what tells you that. So the bigger number goes to this sign. So in this case, it's a plus sign. So our bigger number, which is 18, goes to the positive sign, and our smaller number, which is 3, goes to the negative sign. Moving on to our very last one. We're making some good progress here. Okay, so we've got y minus xy plus x minus 1. Okay. Right, so this one we need to try and look at. Let's have a look. So highest common factor, can we spot one? So we've got a y and a y there, but there's no y in those 2 terms. We've got an x only in 2 terms, and then we've got a random minus 1 on the end. So clearly there isn't a highest common factor. There also clearly isn't a difference of 2 squares. There also clearly isn't a trinomial that we can use. So in this case, it must be some sort of grouping or brackets that we need to try and develop. So let's see. If I pull out a common factor in these 2 terms, and I just leave these ones on the side, let's see if that helps me out. So I'm going to pull the common y out first, and I'm going to be left with 1 minus x plus x minus 1. Right, so now this still doesn't help me because both terms, I've got 2 terms now. Actually, I've got 3 terms, but what I'm looking at is this is a grouped term. And unfortunately, this is not exactly the same as that, but I can do something to change that bracket around, which will then actually give me 2 brackets that are exactly the same. So in order to swap the signs around within that bracket, all I do is I pull out a minus 1. So it becomes minus y outside the brackets, which will then change the negative x into a positive x and the positive 1 into a negative 1. All right. Okay, now we can see that those brackets are exactly the same, and we can pull out that common bracket of x minus 1. Okay, what would I be left with once I pull out this common x minus 1? Well, the first term would be a minus y, and the second term would be a plus 1, because we pull out the full thing. If we multiply back in, we would see we'd have a minus 1 times x minus 1, and we would have a plus x minus 1 as well. The next thing I would do, it's not necessary, you would still get the marks, but what I would do is I'd neaten up that second bracket, because we typically like to see a positive number start off the bracket. It just looks a little bit neater that way, and that will give you the full marks for that question. Really good job. Very special thank you to our sponsors for making this video possible. Remember to read up all about them in the description below. Visit our website for more of these epic tutorial videos. If you can't find the answer to your question, remember you can send us the question and we'll respond with a personalized video just for you. Until the next time, stay epic.